Welcome to Electric Focus, and today we're talking about some of the issues I've had with the Jaguar I-PACE, a bit of an update really, and more importantly about a recall on the I-PACE that may affect you if you've got a Jaguar I-PACE. Probably doesn't affect you if you've ordered one, because I believe it won't be a problem for new cars, but certainly check with your Jaguar dealership. But let's get into the video and find out what it's all about. So I've had my Jaguar I-PACE now for 3 years, and I've reported on a previous video about some of the issues I've had, and I'll just run through those again because I think I missed one actually when I did that video, and also after that video I had to have the car taken in, so I'll explain that as well. But so the issues I've had over the last 3 years, I wouldn't say that necessarily it's made me or put me off having a Jaguar I-PACE, but certainly I've probably had more issues with this car than I've had with other cars in the last 15 years. In fact, I'd say I hardly had any problems. I've just been lucky really. I've had no problems with the new cars I've had in the last 15 years. And I would say that some of the issues I've had are fairly minor, but some have been quite major. So starting off with, when I first got the car, I had to take it in just because the actual app that comes with the car wasn't communicating with the car. So that was a little bit frustrating. I had to take it in. You'd have thought they could just fix that over the air, but I had to take it in, but it was fixed within a couple of hours, and then I had the car back. So it wasn't a massive inconvenience. That was really early on though. So I was starting to think, is there going to be issues if I've got a problem, really this early? Then everything was fine for quite a while. It wasn't till the end of 2021 I had a problem. But bear in mind, this was all in lockdown, so I wasn't doing a lot of driving at that time. And I suddenly had a problem with the heater. It wasn't working at all. I wasn't getting heating in the car. So I had the car taken in, and they said, yes, the heater was faulty and would need to be replaced. And when I looked on a few forums, there'd been a few issues around this. And I also spoke to my Jaguar dealership about the sort of waiting time for this to be replaced, and they said it could be a problem because at that time, which was the second kind of lockdown period, there was a lot of problems with parts, and I did kind of understand that, and that was a worldwide problem, so I knew it could be a wait. Anyway, it did turn out to be a 5-month wait, which was a bit of a pain, particularly since it was over winter, and I had to use heated seats and a heated steering wheel, which I was so glad I had, instead of using the heater over winter. But it got me through, and I'd rather have the car than not and have some other hire car that I didn't want. So it got me through winter. I waited 5 months, it was replaced. I've not had a problem since then, so that was a heater issue. So the next problem I had was actually in mid-2022, and this is the one I missed on the previous video. The car came up with a warning on a long journey which said that the coolant level was low. I thought I'd not seen that before, so I pulled over at Motorway Services. I phoned Jaguar Assist, and they said, yes, you mustn't drive the car, we need to get somebody out to it. And I thought, great. Anyway, they said it shouldn't be too long, but I had to wait about an hour and 20, I think, in the end. And the AA man came out, and he said, first of all, I've not seen one of these before. And I said, what, Jaguar I-PACE? He said, no, an electric car. So that was a bit of a concern, and he looked a bit worried about what he had to do with it. He was kind of looking around, looking a bit vague. He went off and phoned Jaguar and then came back. I was thinking he was going to say something like, well, I've got to go off and get this special coolant, but he just came back with this bottle and filled up the coolant in a car and said, that's it, it's done. And it was just literally, I said, well, what is that? What have you filled out with? He said, it's just water. I thought, great, I could have done that myself. Anyway, it was sorted, and I've not had a problem with that since. That was fine. Until the next problem I had, which I reported on, I did a couple of videos on, which was water appearing in the front trunk. And I'd seen a couple of mentions on this on forums, and the comments that I'd seen had said, well, perhaps it's condensation, and people were sort of speculating about it. And I thought, well, maybe it's just me, maybe it's just condensation, maybe I've put the cable in the car and it was a bit damp and that's why it looks a bit damp. I kind of left it for a bit, thinking it's no big deal. And then I looked again, because I don't open that actually very often. I only open it really to get the cable out if I was using an AC charger on the go, which is very rare. So when I looked at the front again, I could see that it was still damp again when I looked at it. So I thought that's a bit odd. Maybe the seal's gone around the unit or the bonnet itself. So I thought I'd better get it checked in to have it looked at. So I arranged for it to be put in. But during that time, waiting for it to go in, I actually noticed some water coming through the lighting above my head in the car. A couple of drips coming down. I thought, well, that's a bit of a concern. So anyway, I thought, well, I'll get that looked at when it goes in. And then the next morning, the car completely shut off. And that was due to the water getting into the system. I called Jaguar Assist and they had to get someone out to have a look at it. And I did a video on that, and it was a bit of a faff that day. But eventually they had to take the wheels off, get to the brakes, to release the brakes, put the wheels back on, and then wheel it off. And they took it off and to have it looked at. And it ended up being the seal on the windscreen that had gone, and they put it down to a manufacturing fault, replaced the seal, and I've not had a problem with that since. And actually I got quite a nice car as a loan car as well at the time, so even though I had to wait a few days, it was no big hardship. But again, it was a bit disappointing to have that issue, and I've not had any problems since then until somebody posted on my YouTube channel that there had been a recall on all Jaguar I-PACEs due to a potential fire risk. And I thought, okay, I'll look into that. I'd not heard it, I'd not seen anything, I'd not had any communication on it. And when I looked on the web, I could see that there was an issue, and that it talked about a recall of over 6,500, I think it was, Jaguar I-PACEs in the US. So I wasn't sure if it was just the US and it was not impacting this country. So I looked on the government website to see if there were any recalls listed, and there was a recall listed, lo and behold. So I'll talk through what it said now, and I'll show you on the screen. So the recall is dated 12th of April 23, and it says, reason for the recall: on certain vehicles, the EV battery condition may be degraded. A degraded EV battery may give rise to an elevated risk of thermal overload. In extreme cases, this may lead to a vehicle fire. And then it says, contact your local Jaguar dealership or manufacturer. You will not need to pay for anything involved in the recall. And it says how the manufacturer will repair replacement of traction battery and associated components. Now, that's not actually what I've heard they're going to do. The information that I've had is that they're going to update the battery energy control module. And what that means is, if it detects a fault, this module, or potential that the battery is going to overload and catch fire, if it detects that, then it will limit the capacity of the battery to 75%. So that means you can't charge a battery above 75% state of charge. So that would be a little bit inconvenient. It's interesting that they've taken that route. And I say that because this is the same company that provided this battery that provided the batteries for the Chevy Bolt. So GM's Chevy Bolt in America, you may have heard there was a mass recall of those cars because of battery fires or potential battery fires, and there had been some. And they had to, in the end, replace the batteries completely on all those models. And I believe the Hyundai Kona as well had an issue where they had to replace some batteries on some of the earlier models. So I do wonder whether Jaguar will end up replacing the whole battery. The car's going in next week, and I'll have to see what happens when it actually goes in, and see if I just have this module update, or whether they say that any of the battery cells need replacing, or in fact the whole battery pack. So anyway, that's it. You might want to know that they said that in the US they had about 8 vehicle fires. No injuries to anybody, but certainly it's a concern. There's been those fires, and if you are buying a second-hand Jaguar I-PACE, you certainly want to make sure that the recall has been done. Anyway, I hope that was useful. Thank you for watching as always, and I'll speak to you soon.